head chef?
Yeah.
Lead
Executive chef.
Executive. What do you prefer?
Chef. What do you call yourself?
I don't know. Chef.
He's just here.
Chef.
Yeah.
Okay. Chef.
I mean, chef means chief.
Right.
In French. So it kind of works.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll try and do it legit and prep or introduce you properly here.
It's whatever. I go by whatever. So it's not that serious.
We got to get it right, man.
Yeah.
Just switch that interchangeably. It's whatever you're feeling at the moment.
Let's call you Chief.
Whatever, Chief.
Actually, I don't like that one.
You don't want that one?
Anything but Chief.
Anything but
Yeah.
Chief. Got it. Chef.
Yes.
Right on.
All right, if you guys are ready, we'll rock the music
do it.
and start this thing off.
Hit it. No booze this time. Which I'm not going to lie, today, we could be doing that. I could have.
I almost asked.
It's all right. It's probably more responsible not to.
Yeah.
You know.
The bar manager gave me a bottle of whiskey. It's in the office, so I almost grabbed it. So
It's up to you. All right. Welcome back to the Okayest Cook Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whonsetler, here with Andy Heiser. Don't let me hang in. He's not looking.
Yeah, here we are. Here we are. We're here.
And we are in a unique location
we don't
today.
sit, this is a weird setup. I've not sat on this side of you.
It is different. It is different. It sounds different. It feels different. It smells different. It smells
Yes.
amazing.
It does smell amazing.
We have a special guest, Mr. Alan Sternberg,
hello.
executive chef, head chef here at Bluebeard.
Yep.
And we are in their back room in the bakery.
Yeah, so this is the bread room for Amelia's.
Nice.
It's all in one building. So there's a pastry room, the bread room, and then the actual restaurant side of things. So
yes.
we're in the back on the big wood table that I roll most of our pasta on.
Sick.
Because the bakery leaves about noon, 1 o'clock, and then I kind of use the space because no one else is using it. So
Nice.
Yes, it's beautiful. I love it. Like just the smells in here. It smells like fresh bread. And
Yeah.
I mean, you've got fresh bread around the corner. It looks awesome. And
yeah.
and honestly, I kind of forgot that Bluebeard and Amelia's were like a sister company, right? Or same owner.
Same company technically.
Yeah.
They run kind of autonomously because Amelia's has 3 storefronts.
Right.
Production facility that they're building out. Plus, they do all their bread production here during the day.
Nice.
So, but yeah, it's one family.
Yeah, Amelia's is one of the reasons I've had to increase my rent budget because my studio's in the Stutz.
Okay.
And they
Yeah,
just
yeah.
opened a shop there. And oh, geez, everything they put out's just top tier.
Yeah,
absolutely love it all.
It's dangerous here because like all the pastry scraps and like leftover bread and stuff just kind of get like left out for us to kind of graze on all day. So like, yeah, I don't know. Like if you don't watch it, it's your, oh man, I consumed 10,000 calories today just walking by a tray of food. Yeah. So like you gotta watch it a little bit here.
Yeah, that's cool. I got a little bit of that from my Starbucks days. So, working at a coffee shop, if you accidentally, air quotes, accidentally pull an extra shot and what do we do with this one?
Yeah.
We just
Guess
put
I'm
it down.
taking it.
So
Yes.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah. What have you guys eaten this week? We're trying to keep on trend now that Andy's back here.
back, so we'll actually do what we're supposed to do. So again, Alan, I'm sure you've listened to every one of our episodes.
Every single one.
We usually start with something we've had from the week. Usually something that's fun, exciting, and entertaining, different maybe, or if it's just a cool thing that maybe is new to you.
A notable meal.
Notable meal.
Andy's going to start.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think like quickly. Where did I go the other day? Where was I at? I was just at a restaurant. Oh my gosh.
Do I need to start?
Yeah, you need to start. I was ill prepared for this.
Oh geez. So fish and chips have been on my mind a lot, like always, basically. And it's kind of hard to find a good fish and chip joint here in Indy. I would love some recommendations.
I don't have any. I work in restaurants. I don't go to restaurants that much. So.
Well, I ended up at Triton
Okay.
Brewery the other day, and theirs was actually pretty decent. Decent fish and chips. So
I'm good now. I've got mine now.
got yours
And
now.
also a suggestion for you. So Chatham actually has pretty decent fish and chips.
Okay.
Chatham Tap.
Chatham Tap, yeah.
I prefer the one in Butler, but obviously it's walkable from my house, so I can stumble home to that one. But also from the neighborhood, my notable meal is actually from Burns Pizza. It's a Burns Pizza and Grill. It's a grilled
think I've been.
pizza place right off of, what would that be, like 52nd and Illinois? Like right
Yeah,
Illinois?
there used to be a food truck a long time
Yeah,
ago, and
that's-
then I think their partners they own Gather 22 also down on like 22nd Street or whatever.
Nice.
So
I went there last night. Went with they've got some fun names of their pizzas and whatnot, but we basically got a margarita pizza along with my go-to pepperoni sausage, banana pepper type of setup. But it was grilled, right, so
foolproof.
From the pizza episode, it's not a pizza oven. It's grilled. It's really thin. It's not like if you're going there for a hearty pizza, it's like every other piece of pizza you've ever had. It's not going to be like that, but it's one of those places that was really cool to experience something kind of different, but it's got a good smoky taste to it, obviously, off of a grill. Yeah. So it was really good.
I used to do grilled pizzas at home a lot. It
was good
when the kids were little. So
let's go.
But how about you, Alan?
Man, I've just been working.
What you been grazing on?
I mean, it's tricky because I'm kind of always here. But I mean, my wife made dinner last night, and it was just it was my first day off in 2 weeks, and it was just a simple pot of beans and sausage, and it was just like, dude, it's just like heartwarming and good, and
you didn't have to do anything.
I didn't have to do anything. I just got to sit on the couch. It was great. So
that's awesome.
I mean, just the little things like that. Like people always get weird about cooking for chefs, and it's like, if I don't have to cook it, like it's probably gonna taste great to me. Like it's that simple. So
we're people too.
Yeah.
Right. No, I would have to imagine too the level of when you're working and you're thinking about like what you're actually creating for other people and like why that has to be perfect because it's for other people. But at the end of the day, when it's just for you,
people always worry that we're gonna judge them, and it's like no, like it's just not. It's not that. It's you're taking care of somebody else. So I mean, it's the hospitality side of cooking for someone else.
Yeah.
So and it's nice to receive that instead of just kind of sometimes you get stuck in that rut of just kind of always worrying about guests and always worrying about whatever that you kind of forget to take care of yourself. So when someone does that for you, it's just I don't know. It's just warming and makes you feel good. So.
Right. Which is awesome, especially with our ethos of just being like the okayest chefs, the okayest cooks on our episode. Like we're here to get a little bit better, and that's kind of an overall goal. And so to hear that from someone who's like in like this, Bluebeard, for those of you who are not from the Indianapolis area, is a very highly respected restaurant in the area. Always top tier, one of the top 10 places I think anybody who's going to like take someone to a restaurant, this is probably one of them that they'd probably go to. So
appreciate that.
Kudos to you, sir.
Absolutely.
So it's cool to hear from you again that like at the end of the day, if you're making a meal for people and that hospitality side of that, like made with love is probably going to be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, like it took me a long time to feel like I was a good home cook. Like like in a restaurant, it's so different, right? Like you've got lots of burners, you've got lots of pots and pans, you've got an endless supply of towels to grab stuff out of the oven or to like clean stuff. Like you have a lot of space, you've got 15 cutting boards. Like it's just so different than cooking in your home kitchen. And it's just like, oh, well, I don't have the best equipment, or I have one pan that does kind of everything for me. So like, how do I make this meal out of this? It doesn't have to be super complicated. It just has to be good. And it just took me a long time to figure out how to translate restaurant cooking to home cooking. So yeah, I get it. I felt like I was a bad home cook for a long time, even though I felt like I was an okay chef at that point. So.
Well, do you have an agenda? You usually do. Otherwise, I'm just going to steer away.
There's a little agenda, but nothing serious. Here we are. Obviously, we're at Bluebeard. I've got a story about Bluebeard.
Okay.
My wife and I came here, and I apologize to the listeners if I've told this story already. I kind of forget.
I don't know. I'm trying to think.
We came here on a date night, and gosh, it's been a long time. And my wife is not the most adventurous eater, like some of the listeners are familiar with. And we had this beautiful charcuterie, like for starters. And the cheese was a little funkier than I'm used to, so she didn't like it. But then we ordered the ostrich. And I mean, your menu just like is constantly rotating, right? Like nothing's the same.
Yeah.
For very long. At the time, you had ostrich, and we ordered that because I thought it sounded interesting. I'm adventurous. I wanted to see what it was all about. The server puts it down on our table, and it's like super rare, almost like they do tuna, so just seared on the outside, super rare in the middle. I thought it looked stunning. And my wife looks at it, and she looks up at the server and says, "This isn't really ostrich, is it? Like that's just the name of the dish?" And the server was like, No, that's ostrich.
That's real.
Yeah. And she her face like turned a little shade, but like she overcame it. You know, she tried it. So
Yeah.
so kudos to Steph for trying it. It was not her favorite, but it was outstanding. Like, absolutely loved it. Like, such a good piece of meat from an odd animal.
An odd bird.
An odd
Yeah.
bird, yes.
Yeah.
And that kind of is going to set up a little bit of the conversation I'd love to talk to you today, and that's how, like, just preparing odd animals for people, or like animals that aren't like traditionally in your grocery stores, like ducks.
Yeah.
Duck's probably the most familiar of all the animals. But
Duck.
like people are used to eating cows and pigs and chickens.
Obviously we eat a lot of venison, so
Yes.
that's usually the one we have to try to hide on people. But
Yeah, and so I guess just like chit chatting about like how do we make things like that a little bit more approachable for your non-adventurous eaters, or
I think a lot of that stuff it's pretty lean for the most part. Anything wild's probably going to be leaner. Boar might kind of be the exception, but boar's still leaner than like farmed.
yeah, 100%.
we'll see here in a
pork.
couple weeks.
Yeah.
See what Andy brings home.
I leave Friday.
And then, I mean, the other, like, that's one thing. So people are usually scared to undercook it, so they tend to overcook it or cook
Yeah.
it too hot. And it just dries out because it doesn't have as much intermuscular fat in it. So cooking stuff a little bit slower. Do your homework ahead of time. Like, cool, I got this thing. Like, what are those internal temperatures I need to hit? And just kind of have a basic understanding of what the different parts of the animal eat like. Like, if you're taking a loin, you can do a steak. If you're going for a shank or something from one of the legs, it's going to be something that moves a lot. So you're going to have to braise it. And a lot of times I think people take stuff out of braises really like way too quickly. The slow cooker is kind of like the one of the worst things in the world to me, because what people do is they leave it in the slow cooker all day. It inherently overcooks, right? Like, that's what you're doing is you're breaking it down, and it lets go of all the moisture inside of it, and then they take it right out of the liquid before they cool it down, and it's like it doesn't have anything to suck up, like any moisture to suck up, because you've let go of all this moisture from inside of it, and it's just like wanting moisture, so when you eat it, it's just really dry. And that it doesn't have to be like an odd cut of meat or whatever, or an odd animal.
That's true for
it's just kind of the braising technique or any kind of low and slow. Like, if you do barbecue, you know, you've got shoulders, you wrap them in the paper and you let them sit for 8-10 hours because they've cooked for like 16 hours. So it's about half the amount of time that something cooks is kind of what it needs to rest. So if you cook a steak for like 10 minutes, it should probably rest for about 5.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
You know, if you cook
Huge
something
tip.
for 24 hours, well, let it rest for about 12 hours. Let it kind of, you know, absorb everything that's kind of loosened up in there. You've got all these like proteins that they melt basically, and they're just kind of free roaming moisture inside the muscle. So if you cut it right away, that's when you get that like bleed out, or they call it, where it's just like the moisture on the board. It's not actually blood. Like, blood turns black when you cook it. But people see the red and they're like, oh, it's blood. And it's like, no, it's not blood. It's just proteins that are heat soluble, and they're just melting. And if they don't have time to kind of reabsorb back in, you're going to be left with something that's really juicy on the first bite or two, because all that moisture is free. And then by the time you get to that 3rd, 4th, 5th bite, it's just like chewy and dry and dusty almost, just because there's no more moisture. Like, you got it all in that first 2 bites.
And you're just like sopping at the gravy at your plate,
you're just
because
like,
it's all
like, it is
loose.
Yeah, I mean, we've all had a pork roast that someone's put in a slow cooker, and you know, you eating it, and it's just the driest thing you've ever had. But like, it's the same with game, same with these leaner cuts. Is they need that time to rest after cooking. And it might not be like ripping hot. Like, if it's sizzling still, like, it's too hot. So take your time, get to know what you're cooking, and know what temperatures you actually need to hit, and don't rush it. It's okay. Like, it's okay if you do something ahead of time, and
so I think that's a lot of the times people they want to do something fresh and like right there for somebody, but like restaurant, I mean, take a page from a restaurant. Most of the stuff's not cooked the moment you asked for it. It was already far enough along and maybe finished when it was ordered.
Or like steaks we do here, it's we start them like, if you get a first and second course, and the steaks on the second course, we start it right away so it has time to cook properly, rest, and then when we slice it, it doesn't just let go of everything. So I mean, like, it doesn't have to be like an all day experience here. It can be done within that 15-20 minute window. But like, you know, if you got a side dish that's coming together pretty quick in that 15 minutes, like sear your meat first and throw it in the oven, let it cook a little bit slower in the oven, then pull it out and let it rest. And then your side dish is done, and then you're ready to slice, and your side's hot. Then you got your protein.
That's an interesting concept, and not to completely steer away from kind of what we were talking about, but also I just think it's an interesting point where when you're trying to cook at home, you kind of alluded to this, right? That like when you're cooking in a commercial kitchen, you have access to all the things to make everything time out a lot better than if you're at home with limited resources, right?
Yeah.
So what are some like the good techniques for like if someone's preparing? We have, you know, Thanksgiving's right around the corner. That's still true for this episode.
Should be true. Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of stuff that might be coming out, maybe not in the order that you intended it to, but that's just how it worked because that's what was available in the oven at the time. Yeah. What's a good way to like keep things warm, or not to reheat per se, but like what are some home tactics that the average cook can use to like keep things so by the time it hits the table and is in front of their guests, it's at the right temperature for enjoyment?
So I think like my wife's family and my family are both from Anderson, so like it's about an hour away. So usually I have to wake up early, cook stuff, wrap it all up, then take it there, and I kind of finish stuff there.
Gotcha.
Because I mean, a lot of times like 90% of it can be done, and it's just like, oh, I throw it in the oven, like get the top crispy, or you know that last finishing step that makes it feel still fresh and vibrant.
Right. Yeah.
But if you're entertaining, like, you know, keep stuff covered. You know, it will help keep some of the moisture in. I think a lot of things just kind of dry out. And if they're ripping hot, again, like it's just going to evaporate moisture. And that's when you get those weird dry textures. Like if you have something with like a green bean casserole that's got like cheese or something on top of it, leave it covered. And then when they get there, like, you know, throw it back in the oven until that cheese melts, or throw your broiler on and toast that top. So then that way it feels really fresh still. It's still warm. Most of those holiday foods are kind of inherently soft texturally. So it's not like you're going to like really mess it up by letting it be a little overcooked, or, you know what I mean? Like, or it's sitting a little bit too long. Like, you know, turkey and noodles the pasta's always soft, or the noodles are always soft because they've just soaked up so much moisture. And they're going to keep doing that. You know, potatoes, same kind of thing. Like, you know, do those finishing steps at the very end. And you can kind of have, like, if you have everything ready to go, in restaurants we call it mise en place, everything in its place. So like, if you kind of have that plan, it goes back to looking to figuring out what temperature things should be at. Same thing with non-proteins, like with sides and whatnot. It's like, okay, like, I know this is going to take the longest, so that's the first thing I'm going to start. Well, that's cooking. I'm going to work on the next thing, and then I'm going to work on the next thing. So everything's kind of coming up about the same time, and then I have a plan to finish. Okay, I'm going to throw the fried onions on top of this, throw it in the oven, and get it all crispy again. Like, you know, and then it's like, okay, everything's kind of hitting the table at the same time.
So it sounds like preparation, planning.
Planning, yeah.
And then just not afraid to like hit it on the broiler, because like you said, like,
yeah, be careful with the broiler. I've ruined some stuff for sure in the home broiler.
Right.
Absent-minded Chris is thinking, this is a great way to ruin lots of stuff.
If you use the broiler, put stuff way lower than you normally would. Right. Like, don't put it like right underneath that, right? Because it's gonna.
Because it'll broil.
Yeah, it'll. Yeah.
Yes. Right on. Well, I mean, this is all like, it's all the same. Like, it doesn't matter if we're talking about goose or beef, or
they're
ostrich or whatever. Like the technique should all be very similar. So keeping things fresh, keeping it.
And like I very much look at myself as a very technical cook, more so than like cuisine driven. Like you can, if you have good technique, you can apply it to other cuisines or other inspirations, other products. You're like, okay, I know, this is a base way to do this, so then I can manipulate it. You're not beholden to a recipe at that point, because if I know how to make a vinaigrette, okay, like I don't have lemon juice, but I have lime juice, and there, I can start subbing in, or I can go to a vinegar, or I can, I have the basics under my belt, and then I'm not beholden to any one thing, and you can start creating things, and you feel a little bit more confident too. I think that's the other big part with a lot of home cooking is, if you're dependent on a recipe, then you're not really confident because, I've never made this before. And then you start making excuses, and it's like, well, you've also made lots of other food, so like, what's it close to? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, this kind of reminds me of this other thing that I've already done before. So like, I feel like this is going in the right direction. And if it needs a little more moisture, it needs a little more milk, or you taste it and it's not seasoned well enough, add some salt. Like, it's fine. Like, you're making food. You're not saving lives. So,
Right. Well, this goes back to like my weekly occurrence of mentioning the Flavor Bible on this podcast.
I was thinking about
but I mean, it just goes back to that book is such a good look at just understanding how the different flavors go together, and then to your point, being able to actually cook and not be beholden to the recipe because you don't know what you're doing. It's one thing to follow one because you enjoy it. Like, that's one thing. But for instance, like we were talking about, Steph's, the ostrich scenario. Oftentimes now when I'm preparing, especially when it's game meat for my family, I'll just make the meal of what it is and have them try it before we start getting it. If someone asks me what it is before they eat it, I'll always tell them. I'm not going to lie to them. But at the same time, I don't want it to be like, because it's venison and it's like, so for instance, I just had people over the other night and we did chili, and I made the bread, and it was my beer bread, so nothing super fancy. And then I made the chili, and it was sort of Hank Shaw's recipe, but not really. It was basically, I didn't have some of the things that he wanted to put in it. But again, I kind of went back to like, well, I know what this is supposed to taste like, and when I know the things that I don't have, how to substitute that out for some things that are. And then I got a little experimental with some red wine. I think I've told you about this.
Nice.
But I made it with red wine as opposed to, and it had a cup of coffee and like some wheat coffee in it too. But it needed, I just didn't want to open up a whole thing of bone broth is what I would normally use for it. I didn't want to open up that. I just needed just a little bit. And I was like, I had this little bit of red wine left over, and I was just like, that'll do.
Yeah.
And it was delicious because it was accomplishing the same goal. A little bit of a different flavor profile, but we're talking like a half a cup of wine in the course of this giant pot of chili that's got to cook for 4 hours.
You're also introducing an acid in there with with the broth. You're mostly going after like the collagen or gelatin that breaks down from the collagen in the bone broth. But that little bit of acidity, like there's two things that actually make things taste better on your palate. It's salinity and acidity. Okay. So salt and acid, which is why, if something's really kind of lacking, those are the first two things I lean towards.
That's nice. Good to know.
And even going back to the game thing, like there's some basic rules, like sweetness and acidity help with gaminess. So if you're, that's why there's a lot of fruit pairing or fruit and wine pairings with like duck per se. Duck à l'orange is obviously got some acidity in there,
right.
And some fruitiness. So like the sweetness and acidity really kind of help. So if you know some of these basic rules, like when I was a young cook, like Flavor Bible was great for me to kind of like piece all these things together, and then you've read it enough times, or you've looked up enough things that you're like, okay, I kind of have a basic understanding. Yes, right. And that book's actually a continuation of a book called Culinary and Artistry, which was kind of the first one that really did that. Okay. Same authors, and then they did a vegetarian one that's a little bit more extensive, and obviously it doesn't have the proteins in it, but like if you kind of have the base from the other books on what proteins or what things go with what proteins, and you're like, okay, well the vegetarian one's a little bit more exhaustive in its list, and it's like, like you can start piecing all these things together, and you don't you can find the things that work for you too. I think that's the other thing people lose with recipes is, what's your flavor memories? What are the nostalgic things? Like, I could make something that's very technical. It might be true to an original recipe, but like, the foods I grew up eating, and going back to the question of what good food did you eat this week? Like you are constantly forming these flavor memories, and it's like they're informing your cooking decisions all the time.
100%.
So don't be beholden to anybody but yourself. If it tastes good to you, it's probably going to taste good to other people. So.
Except if it's crisp and hot and spicy. Because Chris's flavor profile is fire.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
A little spicy.
I like some spice too.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Dude, phenomenal tips. I love all this.
Salinity and acidity.
Salinity and acidity. Yeah. So, so I love your tip there with the wild game. So that you said sweetness and acidity.
To kind of, and it doesn't have
that
to be like real hard acids too. Like wine gets used a lot.
Yeah.
And have some vinegars on hand. Like a splash of vinegar can change things a lot. Yeah. Like it doesn't have to become.
Let's talk about that.
It doesn't have to become like the profile of vinegar. Sometimes it's just a splash of something in.
Well, because the holidays are an awesome time to present family with these new wild foods or just different foods, taboo foods, air quotes in some circles.
I mean, we've been eating them since the dawn of time. So
exactly.
That is true. But in recent times, these animals have kind of fallen off the menu.
If it's not chicken, beef, or
or
a pork, it's all of a sudden taboo. But no, the vinegar question I have is this is a world that I've started like outside of I've got white wine vinegar typically for cleaning and red wine vinegar because I like the flavor of it, but I don't necessarily know how to necessarily use it. So I'm kind of curious now, and I'm like, if you were to say like, hey, every cook should have these vinegars on hand, what are those and why?
Oh man, I tend to end up buying a lot of vinegars, like not necessarily at home, but like in a restaurant. Like sherry vinegar is fantastic. It's got some like dark fruit notes in there from the aging process in the sherry. It's got some good sweetness. Like it's still going to be vinegar if you just eat, or drink a tablespoon of it. But for the most part, like it's got a lot more complexity to it. White balsamic's one that I use a lot for like pickling, because it's got a lot of sugar in it. So like you can kind of get away with not cutting it too much, so it can just be bright. Champagne's another one. Apple cider vinegar is super accessible. Don't be afraid to spend a little bit more money and get like a good apple cider vinegar. Okay. Some of these things are, if it's just a commodity thing and it's you can get a gallon for $4, then it's probably going to suck.
Right. Like anything else.
Yeah. Really. But you're also using small amounts of this. So like, adding a splash of apple cider vinegar to a pork dish that's got apples in it already. Like sometimes it's just that little lift and little bit of brightness. Fresh herbs are another thing that I finish a lot with, because it gives that liveliness, and it's like, why does this taste so different? Like there's nothing challenging on my palate necessarily, but it's just those last little finessed steps that, just like finishing the Thanksgiving stuff in the oven, what are those last little details that you can really kind of accentuate a dish with? It is kind of, where I use vinegar a lot. Don't be afraid to make vinaigrettes. Don't be afraid to dress everything. In restaurants, a lot of times there will be like different leaves put on top for garnish to make things look better, but we always try to dress those in some way, whether it's just a little bit of lemon juice and olive oil and salt, but just like everything should be seasoned, and acid's a great way to do it. And you make a little vinaigrette, and that little bit of fat helps the seasoning stick to it, and it's like, okay, you don't necessarily understand why it works, but like, or at least when you're eating it, if you're just a guest and you're just like, oh, that tasted better than I thought it was going to, or I normally don't like this stuff, and then you have those good experiences, and a lot of times it's just coming down to seasoning.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So with the vinegar, we're talking about both like in the pan while it's cooking, just a little splash, or like with the vinaigrette, is that like it's on the table?
Yeah,
essentially.
Like you can do both. It's a lot of times with cooking, you go more into the wine route, especially if it's going to reduce. Like anything you're going to put in there that you're going to reduce, it's going to concentrate. So like the softer, the smaller amount, like sometimes like you can keep adding, right? It's really hard to take away. But like you start layering your seasonings, you add a little salt in the beginning, you let it kind of cook down. You taste it. It's like, it needs more, and then you keep going. Same with acid. And just realize that like when it starts to become a dominant thing, you've probably gone too far. But you can kind of use it very similar to the way you use salt. Vinegars also break things down. So like when you go talk about marinades and those kinds of things, like the acid component is an important part of that. So like, and also being mindful of like how much acid am I actually putting in this whole thing. So like the chili, having a little bit of red wine in there is going to work really well, because everything else is in there is rich and hearty, and that little bit of acid is going to kind of cut it, so it's going to be easier to go back for the other bite because it gives you that little bit of reprieve. So like it's all meant to be, again, finessed into it, and it comes with some experimentation, and start slow, and then you're like, oh, that tasted a little bit better than I expected. So
I'm
not
gonna lie, the wine thing, like that was just a pure, I don't want to open this bone broth. This is liquid. This will work. And I just did it. And then it turned out to have like just a much better flavor profile. I was like, this is going to probably be my go-to mix.
I don't know if I've put wine in chili.
I literally like.
I've done beer, I've done wine, I've done lots of that stuff.
I do a lot of stouts in my chili.
Well, I put that coffee in there, and that's been a recent addition.
But coffee is acidic also.
Right.
Like you know what I mean? Like you don't necessarily think about
I'm making a really acidy chili apparently.
But you don't even think about like, all the things that do kind of constitute as acids. Like there's lots of things that are, below that pH of 7.
Right.
Almost everything we eat technically is an acid or neutral.
Most of the stuff I eat, So.
I mean, like there's almost nothing we eat that's basic other than like eggs.
Right.
Really?
Yeah. Baking soda, baking powder, baking ammonia.
That's what baking ammonia.
Yeah. It's a thing. It's for crackers.
Okay.
Nice. Yes. Well, yeah. Any other hot tips, like in the back of your mind there about like serving different things? I feel like we need to have a conversation about waterfowl straight away.
Yeah.
Not straight away. So we've interacted on Instagram about ducks and geese, and I feel like you have this like taste in your mouth of like
ducks.
We don't necessarily
duck's like my favorite bird.
Duck
is my favorite bird.
So I gotta change your mind though, because like I don't know what I said in a previous episode, but like
it's just ducks. It's the liking goose more than duck.
I remember now. I know why we're here.
That seems so wild to me.
I was thinking about that in the shower today, and I was like, I don't know, like what I was thinking when I said that, but like it was aggressive. It's kind of true. I think it's a combination. So it was like the goose steak, like with that chutney on top, like that fruit,
which is your fruit and acid.
And it's such a good combo. And usually when I'm doing duck, it's exactly like you recommended, just cold pan, skin down.
Yep, that's how
just get it hot enough, and then and that's a beautiful thing by itself. But because it's so beautiful, I try not to like over like
it can take
I don't
it.
do
it can take it.
stuff.
Yeah, no, it can take it. 100%.
So I'll put the chutney on the duck, and then we'll talk again.
Yeah. But like I think something that people forget is they want to take something out of a package and throw it onto or into a pan if you buy it from the store. If you're hunting it, obviously.
Less packaging.
There's less packaging. I mean, other than the natural packaging. But like, I think people are afraid to age things, and they want things to be bright red or look very fresh or moist. And it's like, well, the best way to get a good sear is to let something dry out. When we do ducks here, we try to age them for a couple of days. I've taken ducks up to about 30 days.
Really?
They get pretty gamey, but they also get really, really tender. The skin's really
taking
dry.
all that moisture out.
And you've also got this like amino acid breakdown inside the proteins. So like, I think sometimes with duck, it can be really chewy, just like goose can be. I think goose is way harder to cook than duck, personally, just because it's such a big breast. If you're doing breast. I don't know anybody that roasts whole goose at this point.
Not a wild goose that I've heard of.
No. I mean,
if you roast whole wild geese right in, let us know.
Maybe in like the early 1800s, but like at this point, I don't think many people are doing that.
Not so much,
but so we age like our ducks, and then we trim off any silver skin on the inside. There's definitely a little bit more there. They can help make that chewy and not super delicious for people, just because the texture is weird. And I think people don't render the skin, so like that aging really helps that. And then we take a cake tester, we poke the skin a bunch instead of scoring it. So we put little tiny holes in there instead of having like cuts. Especially since a lot of home cooks, not every home cook is a sharp knife. How about I say it that way?
That's for sure.
What a turnaround.
But it's really easy to slide through that skin and into the meat, and then you're starting to overcook the meat before the skin gets crispy, and then you got rubbery skin, and then you're overcooking the duck, and it can definitely get like a liveriness to it. So we took again cake tester, poke a ton of little holes in it, and then start with a cold pan. Another thing that's different from like restaurants versus home is like, I know most home cooks enjoy the cast iron because they have a real high thermal load. Like they take a long time to get hot, but once they get hot, they stay hot. Something we use in restaurants a lot is carbon steel pans that are the exact opposite. They don't hold heat well, but they get hot super fast. And like our burners are way hotter than your home burner. So like it makes sense why there's this kind of like opposite effect on pan choice. But like our burners will get to like 700 degrees in like the center. So like, you know, it can go really quickly. So like, again, we start in carbon steel, let it get hot quickly, but then like we keep it on that lower setting so it doesn't get too hot. And then you let all that fat just kind of render out. And, you know, then we throw it in the oven and we finish it in the oven so it cooks very gently once that skin gets crisp, and it doesn't really overcook it as much. So, because, I mean, if our burners get up to about 700 degrees and the oven's at 400 degrees, like people sometimes are afraid to put stuff in the oven because they think it's going to burn, but it's like, it's usually cooler than the stove, actually.
Right.
Like, it doesn't have the hot spotting. It doesn't have like those high highs and low lows. It's a lot more consistent.
I find that most people that cook don't really realize how hot the pan is compared to the oven. I think, in fact, if you were to actually survey most people, they would say that, like, if you said which is hotter, the pan or in the oven, then people would naturally say in the oven, because it's like, maybe it's just because they're putting something fully in it, but that's not
I think
true.
It's like if you reach in there, like it's
warm.
everything is hot, and
Right.
like heat is coming out at you, and you don't feel that because, you know, heat's kind of directional. And so like most of the time when it's over top of a pan, like the pan's absorbing most of it, and then the little bits on the outside kind of make their way up, and you're like, oh, it's hot. But like, yeah, I think you're right. You know, something I usually do with the cooks, especially younger cooks, is like I've got an infrared thermometer in the office, and like I'll show them, and like, you know, we got a new grill a couple of months ago, and it's like when we first got it and trying to learn it, like I just got it out and like I'm just checking all the different spots, and it's like, well, this spot's 700 degrees, this spot's 500 degrees, this is 300 degrees. Like there's okay, now we know where the hotter spots are. So like if we want more sear, we can move it to a hotter spot, and we watch it and make sure it doesn't flame up, and then we move it to colder spots. So like it's okay to manipulate things too. Actually, that's another good tip is if your pan's hot and it's like you're worrying about it burning, you can take it off and put it somewhere else. Like you can put it on a cold burner.
No
the
way.
pan's still hot and it's still cooking.
Right.
But I think sometimes people just turn stuff off, and it's like, well, pan's hot, burner's still hot. Like just because you turned off the heat doesn't mean, like, I think sometimes people will ruin things at the end because it's like they're missing that last step of like, oh, I can just move this. Like you can even leave the burner on if you know you're going to come back to it, but like just slide it over.
I will say that I recently moved, and the new house has gas, and I love it. But coming from an electric stovetop prior to that, it is something that, like, I don't know, it just doesn't make as much sense to just move it off to the side. But I mean, I don't know how many times, like when I'm cooking in general, like I do a lot of temperature control by just moving the pan off of it and moving it back on, and just to try to get, because I'd rather not I don't want to lose the heat that I've already created in that spot there either. But that is definitely an awesome tip that, like, believe it or not, that thing does move off the burner.
Yeah.
And you can control
It's not stuck.
It's not stuck. Yeah. Once you're on the burner, it does not mean you're committed to that burner. You can turn it off. You can move it. And there's lots of opportunities to manage.
Like when I'm cooking at home, like that's something I do constantly. Is I'm literally rotating stuff around, because there's usually the one burner at home that works way better than the rest.
Same,
Or it's the one big one, and the other
small.
3 or 4 suck. You know, but we do that here too. Like it's the same. It's just the scale is a little bit different. But like I'm constantly, you know, turning heat off, sliding it to the back of the stove where it's not as hot, but like it's still hot, like, or it's still warm. So like things are still going. You know, I think I read a book, Letters to a Young Chef by Daniel Boulud. I think he says in there, like, mastering cooking is about mastering heat. Like when you can control the heat and you understand how the heat is affecting it, like you don't have to be on or off. Like there's
a range
gradient in between that like it's learning how to manipulate that to get the desired effect. And that's what cooking is to me, or at least the actual physical act of applying heat is like, am I in control of this, or am I stressed out and I'm not watching it and I'm burning stuff? So
that's me. I think.
Yeah. Does cooking? So again, I've always had this like question as far as cooking for a lot of people and sticking to a menu. I mean, I've always just been super, astonished, and also just like in general, I just think it's very cool that you guys can cook something so intricate the same way. Like I could come eat here today and then come back 4 days from now and have that dish again, and it's not going to be like a completely different meal. But in our kitchens at home, like I could do the same thing a couple times a week, and it will taste different. How does that consistency grow? And is that fun to do? Does that get boring? Is that why we rotate menus? Just kind of, I think that's one of the things that is so different about cooking at your level than cooking at ours, is that you have the ability to hit something like perfectly day in, day out consistently.
I mean, there's always going to be some level of variation. I think good restaurants are often the most consistent. It's where you know what you're going to get when you come in, whether you know what you're going to actually order or not. It's the expectation is met and hopefully surpassed. So like one thing we do here, and I do this at home too, is I have a scale and I weigh everything. I weigh my liquids. I weigh everything. Yeah. I use grams exclusively. I took over here about 9 months ago, and getting everyone to switch to grams was a little bit of a challenge, because they were definitely used to more volumetric measurements. But I think it just makes things a lot more consistent. You can do some easy math, like, cool, I'm making pasta. I've got 1,000 grams of flour. Like I can figure out exactly how much, no matter what the recipe is written in. Like I can just do the math real quick. So like being able to scale stuff and being able to, pass that information on in a very efficient way. So like if your recipe says a cup of salt for like a brine or whatever, is it a fine grind salt? Is it iodized salt? Is it kosher salt? Is it
all of those are going to cup differently?
Yeah, right? They are, because
so one cup weighs different. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, but if I say 50 grams, it's 50 grams. Doesn't matter what it is, because like it's still sodium chloride. It's the same thing. Yeah. So like that's where a lot of the consistency comes from. But like, again, like there's always going to be variation. Managing water, managing the moisture inside products is always part of it. Like, is it been sitting for a day or two and it's dried out a tiny bit? Is it, fresh? Is it brined? Is like managing some of that stuff always kind of changes. And like, animals are imperfect creatures. So like every cut of an animal is going to be a little bit different than the other one. But that's where it's like we're trying to mitigate as many of those variables as possible. So that way we can be as consistent as possible.
I like that. Like the weighing things and then finding and I think you said it earlier about how you're finding hot spots and using an infrared heat thermometer to be able to identify like those certain hot spots. I think if you're actually trying to be a little bit better, and that's kind of the whole goal of this show, is to, it's the Okayest Cook, but like how do you get a little bit better? Like, well, take some time to find out what burner is the best burner. Find out what time, or find out how much, like if you have your set of measuring cups, like weigh one every now and then to make sure that like when you're like weighing out your flour, and you're like, especially like when I make my bread, so I'm just thinking about this too, sometimes it does come out a little differently, and if it's a good one, it's like if I would have known in grams how much of that flour I used that time versus the time before that, maybe it tasted a little bit differently. Well, maybe I had 25 more grams of flour that I packed in there when I scooped it out, as opposed to weighing it. So
it's kind of, it also goes back to just like, what's the difference between like science and just like fucking around?
Right. True.
Well, I mean,
keeping notes.
It is right. No, like
we write things down.
I write everything down. Like I have a Google Drive with almost every recipe I've written in the last 8 years or so, that I share with the cooks, so that way I can change it in real time too. And like, just because it's written down doesn't mean that it's a law. Your instincts change, your experience change. Like there's lots of these little variables that, like, it's okay to listen to that little voice in the back of your head. It's like, this doesn't feel right. Like I kind of want a little bit more of this. Like, it's okay. Give yourself grace. Like I think that's part of going back to what makes people better cooks. It's being confident and giving yourself a little grace for the mess ups. Like, it's okay.
It's knowing your audience too, and it's different for a restaurant versus the home cooks. Like, we know who we are cooking for the most part at home. Like, I know what my wife likes. I know what my kids are going to eat. You don't necessarily know at a restaurant who's going to walk in that door, what their food history is. So like, you need consistency there. But like I said, cooking at home, like we can willy-nilly things. And
so like I got into pasta a long time ago because that was kind of one of those things that almost everyone enjoys. Like, even if you can't eat pasta because you're celiac or whatever, like you're still eating like zoodles or cellophane noodles or like some kind of like noodles. People love noodles.
People love noodles.
It's very satisfying. So like I got into that because it allowed me to put different things with that as kind of a gateway, because I don't know my audience. But I've also been cooking in Central Indiana for 21 years, so like I've kind of learned what people gravitate to. I can almost always, like, as we change the menu kind of daily, I can always pick out the things that are going to sell really well. Sometimes there's those dishes that really catch you off guard, and that's been one of the funnest parts of being here is like the demographic is willing to take more chances than some of the other restaurants I've been in.
Yeah.
Nice.
This
So,
one's
like-
into weird stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
like-
Bluebeard's always been a weird experience for me. My very first one, this was years ago. It was not my favorite. And then I've been back several times since, and it's still like I said probably top 10 if I'm trying to entertain someone here and you want to go to a cool restaurant, this is one of them. So,
Yeah. Cool.
but I mean, but it goes with, like you said, like learning that and experimenting and knowing your audience a little bit. But it is cool I was curious, like what are some of these ones that like ostrich, did that hang on the menu very long?
So I actually wasn't here at
Okay.
that point, but we've done boar, we did duck for a long time when I was here. We're probably going to go back to duck or pheasant in the next couple of weeks. We did quail for a while. I love cooking birds. Love cooking birds because I think the expectation's usually pretty low. Same with vegetables. Like I love cooking vegetables because so many people have bad experiences with them. Mushy or undercooked or but like when you really start to nail it and it's like, oh, that was better than I expected, then you you really start making people happy, I think, and like you start building a little bit of that trust with your guests and they start appreciating and trusting you to do some more things that are maybe not the first thing they would have ordered, but because I have that trust, now I'm going to give them the opportunity. My sous chef Marcus is real into, or he's been bugging me about doing more with like invasive species and wild game and those kinds of things. So like, like those become more possible when we do everything else well along the way. So
yeah. What the boar is so I'll have plenty of that coming. Like hopefully, I
love
Friday.
boar.
Early Friday, buddy. I'll be back.
And Andy's going hunting in Texas next week.
all right,
so.
nice.
So we'll see what we come back with.
So one of the, I think Andy, did you answer like, well, I think you were asking like what are some of those like shocking things that sell really well or that have sold better than you thought they might have sold? Do you have something off the top of your head?
I mean, we can always sell octopus here. Like I know that's not crazy at this point, this day and age, but we're still in Central Indiana. Sturgeon sells really well, which I think is interesting. Which I'm a big fan of sturgeon because it's kind of porky and like very meaty. It's also like prehistoric.
It's like eating a dinosaur, man.
Like they don't have
fish,
they don't have spinal cords. They have notochords because they stopped evolving before species started actually developing spinal cords, and like they don't have bones. It's all cartilage. So like it's just this weird old thing. So and we get some good sturgeon from farms in California. So we get to be sustainable in that practice too. But yeah, I don't know. We're still finding so many of those. Like I said, like I've been here about 9 months now. So like I'm still kind of in that first year of trying things out, and we haven't got through all the seasons yet. But also like another big thing we do here is like we build the menu kind of off of what our farmers tell us they have. So like cool. Sundays and Mondays I get a bunch of texts early in the morning, and it's like, this is what we have this week. It'll be here Wednesday if you want it. So then I tell them what I want and what I need, and we build the menu kind of out of that. So that's why the menu changes so much right now, and it has all summer long. Is like, what's the freshest thing I can get? What's the most exciting thing? And that's another bit. It's just like, what are the things we're excited about? Because we can always change. We can, it's not working. Cool. We take it off the menu tomorrow. It's okay. We repurpose it. We, ferment something. We pickle something. We, turn it into a different dish. Like we have that kind of mobility within our space to have those options at our, disposal. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's why people come to places like this because they like what you are doing and like they like the creativity that you're having, and you're having fun. We're enjoying your fun. We've got our places to go if we want like our tried and true. Like we got Domino's, and we know that's never going to change.
Yeah.
But we come here, because it's unique and different and experimental and fun
and something
fresh.
else we try to do is like I try to push the cooks to put stuff on the menu and have input on these things, because I think food's all about community. You know, it's just like whether you're cooking for your family or you're hanging out with your friends, you know, or you're going to a restaurant, like it's about this community aspect, and like very much so in the kitchen too. It's, you know, if they can give me some, they're gonna have completely different experiences in life, so they're gonna have very different views on these same ingredients. So like, you know, they're gonna help teach me. It's gonna get me excited. I'm gonna help, you know, foster some of that creativity with them also. So then we kind of come to something that we wouldn't necessarily come up with on our own, because it's community. Yeah. So like, I think that's been one of the most special parts about this place. So
yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah.
So you said you're from Anderson, so local Indiana boy then.
Yep.
So how did you get into this? Again, going back to, it was 9 months here, but what were we doing? What was Chef Alan doing prior to that?
So first job was at Hoosier Park before the casino part got added. I was in the last season of Churchill Downs owning it before they sold it to a different company. Worked as a dishwasher, realized I didn't want to be a dishwasher very long. Tried to get my stuff done right away so I could help the cooks prep and set up. And then, you know, about a year in, it was like, hey, like, what else can I do? Nice. And then, you know, started working my way through the kitchen and realized very quickly, like, I like the meritocracy of it, and like the faster you worked, the better you worked, the better you did, the more stuff people gave you, which was great for me because I was a pretty awkward, kind of shy guy when I was 17 years old. And, you know, it just kind of kept going with it. Went to Ball State for photojournalism and TCOM for a little bit, realized I didn't want to do that.
Chris, do you want to do that still? Or no?
We talked a little bit before.
Yeah, nice.
And then like that whole thing was like, I've ridden BMX my whole life. So like this was a way to kind of stay in that industry, or to get into that industry. It was like, well, if I could take pictures for magazines and stuff, and then, you know, kind of saw the writing on the wall that magazines were going away. And then,
changing.
Yeah. And then at a certain point, like that like childhood love actually came into the whole food sphere. Because I fell in love with the act of cooking, like the competitiveness, and like maybe competitive's not the right word, but like I looked at it as a competition. But the physical act of cooking I enjoyed a lot more than food, because I was a pretty picky eater growing up. And then, at a certain point I realized I liked learning about new foods. I wanted to know more. I became very inquisitive about it, and just went down that rabbit hole, made the career switch, went to culinary school, moved down here. First real chef job was at a place called Cerulean, where Nesso is currently. And that was kind of that was another like very experimental, modern restaurant.
Super fun.
So it kind of gave me the opportunity to ask as many questions as I wanted and find as many answers as I wanted. That's awesome. You know, and then we, you know, just kind of jumped around a handful of places since then, but, you know, just kind of kept trying to learn the whole time, like learn from bad jobs, learn from good jobs, like just keep learning, keep growing.
That's all I can do.
Yeah, and then wait for the right opportunity. Tried to open a restaurant a couple times and got very close, and then the pandemic happened. So we were like a week away from signing a banknote. And I mean, we were on the right side of it.
Okay,
like it was
good timing.
Yeah, it was. We hadn't signed anything yet. So, but we had like blueprints, everything.
Man.
We had almost everything figured out and how we were gonna do it, and that one hurt.
There's still time. There's still time.
I spent 2 years working on that, and it was like,
don't throw it away.
Yeah, hang on to the paperwork.
Back to the competitive cooking. You've got some stories to share, right? You were just at the World Food Championship, is that right?
Yeah, that was a week ago.
Last week?
That was 1 week ago. Oh my gosh. We entered it into a noodle category. Didn't really know what to expect. I ended up getting second by less than a point.
Oh, jeez.
So close. But, you know, Colin over at Commission Row ended up winning. So good for him.
By 1 point.
Good dude. Yeah, like I hate losing more than I like winning, if that makes sense.
It's you're like among company.
Yeah, I'm not upset at all with him beating me, but man, I hate losing. Yeah. So you know, but yeah, that was fun. There was 2 rounds, and I took the sous chefs from here, and we didn't practice at all. We just kind of raw dogged it, and we just kind of did stuff that like I knew we had either done here or things we were currently doing. So that way they kind of had some kind of base, and they would just kind of like let me do it, and I just kind of told them what to do. And
for a raw dog competition, second place isn't bad.
You know, I haven't done much competition stuff, but Taste of Elegance is put on by the Indiana Pork Council every year, and there's a whole national pork element of it. But I've won that a couple of times. Nice. And I did it for a long time and did really poorly, and then finally realized like you have to, if you're being judged, you have to cook for what you're being judged on, not
what you want to do.
Yeah. so that's been very helpful for me to understand if I do those kinds of things. Yeah. That it's not a restaurant dish. It's does it hit the brief of what you're being told you're being scored on? But
yeah, it's interesting you say that. I have a buddy who's a competition barbecuer, and he's a lot of his stuff when I've had it at his competitions or from the competition, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not bad. Statistically, I mean, it's like it's definitionally perfect.
Yeah.
But stuff that I've had to make me before at home, or like his version of stuff's always more fun. It's always better. But I think that's probably the nature of like getting there.
But
what are you being judged on?
I think that's also going back to the previous bit of the conversation. It's listen to your instincts. Like do what you like. Yeah. Because that's when things actually get really good.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes the perfection is in the imperfections. Like
100%.
Yeah.
Well, you think about
is
like
that
maybe
wabi-sabi? Is that what that is?
I don't know.
The perfections and the imperfections. This is a Japanese philosophy.
Yeah.
I think it's wabi-sabi, but I don't know that for sure.
I like it. It sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. No, but if you think about like your like if you have a friend or family member or buddy who's like, man, their blank is so good. It's the best I've ever had. Well, it's probably because it's their version of it. Like it's out of an experiment that they did.
Yeah.
They did their version of it based off of something they learned from prior, but they made a change because it's what they wanted to have in that dish. And it's probably some of the best things that have ever been created have come from just that. So
or like where you're at personally too, like you know, did they bring it to you when you weren't feeling well, when something, you know, is there some kind of nostalgic connection to it, like because sometimes you can't beat that. Like there's nothing technically about that makes it better than the other thing. It's just emotionally you are invested in this thing. So
but it's
again,
huge.
It's
a huge factor.
So like going back to cooking at home, it's if you care about it, you're going to create those moments just for taking care of people. Like that's where that connection's really going to be, and that's when the meals really become special. Is it perfectly seasoned? Maybe not. But like, was it good, and did I have a good time? Or, you know, am I stressing out and I'm being a menace to be around because I'm worried about the food and I'm not being enjoyable? Like,
been there.
Like that's where, but that's where that confidence comes in, where it's messed it up. It's fine. It tastes good. Like it's okay. Let's just have a good meal. Let's not ruin our day.
Most of the people we're cooking for don't see the imperfections that we know
exactly.
exist.
Like you're going to be so much more critical and analytical about the thing than the person that, deviled eggs pop 2 in your mouth and they're on their way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and you're just like, like the filling wasn't perfect. Like it's just not that serious.
Yes.
No, it's good. It's from a lot of good tips out of this episode. As far as like the use of salt and acids.
The gentle heat. I need to use more of that.
Yeah.
Definitely more vinegar. I need to use more of that. So.
It's one that the gentle heat's the one that I've not played with enough as far as like start it on the high, but then use the oven to finish it.
Yeah,
I like that.
And I mean, like you said, you have a gas stove now, so like that is a little bit more instantaneous.
Yeah.
You know, in going back to restaurants versus home, like we have cast iron eyes that the burners are on, so like they retain a good amount of heat. Like the coils on an electric stove are going to retain a good amount of heat. But the home gas stoves less so you can just turn that flame down or turn it off, and like it'll, you know, I mean, like you have like just learn your setup.
Right.
You know,
it's good.
Love it. Well, Chef, we don't want to keep it too much longer here, so we'll. And it sounds like things are kind of heating up around here, so we don't want to.
Yeah, they're cutting bread for dinner.
We don't want to be in the way here for too much longer. Well, do you have any last thought recipes you want to share with the crew, or?
I
kind of putting you on the spot here. I don't know.
Yeah, like I mean, recipes are hard, and like I said, like I try to be very precise because like sometimes I try to be precise not because I know it's perfect, but because I know I want to change it, and if I have a good jumping off point, like I can say, hey, like there was too much acid in this one, there was too much salt, like you know, but I have it exact. Like this is where I was.
Exactly what you did.
So then I can start I can control my variables.
Right.
But so like it's kind of hard. Like I have no problem if anybody is like, hey, how did you make this, and wants to message me. Like I don't care. Like I've made so much food in my life that like I'm not holding on to one thing. Also, again, like I have 20 years of experience doing this professionally.
Yeah.
So like my movements aren't gonna be replicated in a written recipe. So like if anybody has any questions about like stuff that they've had that I've cooked, like I'm willing to give it out.
Come to Bluebeard, have a meal.
Yeah.
Right. And then right into Alan. If you got something you're struggling with, maybe hit the man up. He might have some little bits of knowledge to drop on you. Because now I remember why this conversation happened. I think it was someone made an audacious statement about liking Goose more than Doug, and here we are.
It was the day. It was what I was feeling that day.
So I mean, just Duck's my favorite bird. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for the time again.
Absolutely.
These are amazing
really appreciate you.
Little notes here. Like I said, the people that we do this for are the people that need to take little notes like this from someone who's like doing it at a level that they don't see themselves ever being able to do. But at the end of the day, like again, I think you've got a great head on your shoulders about like. We're not curing cancer here. We're making delicious food. We're giving people a good time.
And we make mistakes constantly. Right. Like I make mistakes every day. Like there's so many times I'm cutting something and I was like, well, that was stupid. Like, oh, that was a bad cut. But like sometimes it's just don't mess up the same ways over and over again.
Yeah,
like learn a little bit. Like you don't have to become, Elaine DeCoste overnight. You just like, well, that didn't quite work the way I wanted it, so next time I'll just do it this way. Like, and then if that messes up, then try a third way.
Yeah.
Like
let's go. Make new mistakes.
Yeah. Don't make the same mistakes over and over again. I actually tell the cooks that constantly. Like, I expect you guys to mess up, but like, just don't keep messing up the exact same way. Like, that's
change up your
absolutely.
Love it. Nice. Sweet. Wow, dude, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
100%. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. We'll be calling you back for more tips and questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here local, and I'm kind of always here, so you know where to find me.
We know where to find you. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. So listeners, come to Bluebeard. If you're traveling, come to Bluebeard.
Yeah, we just started taking reservations for the first time in 12 or 13 years.
Nice.
So as we go into those colder months, you don't have to put your name on a wait list and then figure out something to do for an hour. Mm-hmm. So still taking walk-ins in the bar room. So if you're local, they're trying to be accommodating to both sides. So we're also trying to get more information about our guests, so that way we can be more hospitable, which is why we ended up deciding to take reservations. So.
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
It's been awesome. Yeah.
All right, dude. Thank you.
Appreciate it, sir.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Bye.